Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Ophir Gutelson. For those who not doesn't know me, I'm co-founder and organizer in UnXeptable for saving Israeli democracy. I'm based in Palo Alto, and we are going to start soon the discussion with Professor Itai Ater, and he's already here. Hi, Itai.
Good evening.
So I'm going to start just with a couple of words about where we are, what we are doing, and why we are here during the war. Um, so we are on day 10 of the war between that is running now, almost like a regional war with Iran. As we speak, missiles are still flying on Israel and across the Middle East. Our soldiers, both American and Israeli and allies, are fighting. And today and Itai can tell more about what's happened in Israel today, but it doesn't look like the war is close to end, even though we heard yesterday some words from President Trump. Um, and on parallel, there are things happening in Israel that are not related to the war. The judicial overhaul is continuing, the democracy is under harm, and the elections are just on the corner. Um, so today, we are discussing something that it seems to be like unconnected to the war, but probably has a lot of connections to the war. Itai is a professor in Tel Aviv University and a leader in the pro-democracy academia initiatives, and he will tell more about what he is doing. And Itai, together with two other researchers, that Itai will mention them because I don't remember the names, dig into the data of the emigration that happened from Israel in 2023 and 2024 that remind us a lot what happens when democracies are degrading to theocracies or totalitarian, authoritarian, whatever you want to call it. And we will dig into this data. The one thing that I want you to take from this discussion, and we will talk about it at the end as well, is that we are here obviously from love to Israel, from the idea that we want to save Israeli democracy. We are also really concerned with what's happening on the ground, and we want to do whatever we can to help winning the elections so we can save Israel. So for that, I will leave the stage to Itai now. Itai, thank you for being with us. And I don't know, do you hear any noise? Is it noisy here, or you hear me fine? Fine. Itai, please introduce yourself. Introduce the pro-democracy activity on the academia, which is crucial for democracy, and then we'll dive into the data. So the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ophir. Thank you, everybody, for being here. What you're doing is really, really crucial for Israel, and thank you for the invitation and give me the opportunity to talk about what we're doing and about our findings. I'll start with talking briefly about myself. I'm a professor at Tel Aviv University. I grew up in the south of Israel um, and did my undergrad at Hebrew U. And after the undergrad, went to Stanford. I did my PhD at Stanford University. My two elder kids were born at Stanford, and twins, boy and a girl. And we decided to go back to Israel in 2008. They were born in 2007, and now they are 19 in 2 weeks. My girl is in the army, serving in the army. My boy is going to join the army in August. And I have a little daughter who's it's ninth grade. I'm an econ professor, just a regular econ professor. And in the last 3 years, I'm actively, highly involved in what's going on in Israel in terms of the fight for the democracy. My story briefly is my mother passed away at the end of 22. I set the Shiva the first week of January 23. And during the Shiva, we heard the famous
Statement.
Yes, by Yariv Levin about the judicial overhaul. And the end of the Shiva, the Motzei Shabbat of the Shiva, we didn't stay at home, but we went to Habima for the first demonstrations. Since then, I'm here like working hard, trying to defend the democracy. I have two hats in a sense. The first hat is I'm the leader of the Economist Forum, which is like all senior economists in Israel have joined a group where they are warning, or used to warn, still warning about certain act by the government regarding the democracy. We have their officials from the academia, people who worked under Netanyahu government, for the Bank of Israel and the Ministry of Finance. All of them are in this group. And I'll show you soon one statement that we issued in January 23, 2 weeks or 3 weeks after Yariv Levin's talk, okay? There we issued about the warning, what would happen to the Israeli economy if the judicial overhaul would continue. On that statement, 450 economists signed, including several Nobel laureates. About 9 Nobel laureates have signed this clear warning. At the same day we came out with this statement, Netanyahu had a press conference to address our warning. There was no one economist standing by Netanyahu. It was clear that what the government was trying to do and still trying to do would not only harm the democracy, but also harm the Israeli economy. Okay, that's one story. And by the way, one of the concerns that we raised back then is about a brain drain, that many good Israelis would rather leave Israel if what the government is planning to do would actually happen, and I'll show you soon the findings. The other thing that Ophir mentioned is we have a grassroots organization in the academia in Israel. It's quite amazing. Starting in January 23, there are professors from all universities and several colleges that have formed organically an organization that is trying to defend the democracy. There are representatives from different faculties and schools and universities, and then there's a head, an organization at the head that organizes and coordinates all the activities that we are doing at the universities. What does it mean? It means rallies. It means petition to the court. It means demonstrations, speeches, everything. We are one of the largest organizations within this movement of protest, pro-democracy movement in Israel. We are, of course, working with other organizations like UnXeptable, but also Brothers in Arms and other organizations. This is one of the most important organizations within this realm of pro-democracy movement in Israel, trying to defend. Now, I will tell more about later, but we're also preparing for the elections, how we're going to improve the chances of winning and bringing back the liberal camp to be the leader and saving Israeli democracy and Israel in general. Okay, so that's the two hats that I have, and I'll be happy to talk more about these and what are we doing, what are the challenges, and so on.
Yeah, we will discuss it a little bit later after you show the crisis, and then we can deep dive into the action that maybe we can do from here. So I will put myself off spotlight, and you can start share the screen. Actually, you should be able to start share your screen if I make you a co-host.
Yeah, I think I can. So I prepared a small presentation with the main findings. We can talk more about not only about the findings, but also the interpretation and what are the concerns. But let me just show you the main findings about the brain drain and the immigration surge. Okay, so just before the finding, I mentioned this warning that we issued in January 23. Basically, all economists, many economists, I don't know what they think about whether they vote for the government or not, but it was really across the board. And this just one short statement from this about the brain drain, which will have dire consequences for the economic resilience of Israel. That was in 2023. Okay, January, beginning of this government. But let's go to the findings. And this is a joint work with Professor Itai Bergman. Itai is the head of the Bergler School of Economics at Tel Aviv University. He was a professor at MIT before coming back to Israel, okay? And Doron is a PhD candidate here at Tel Aviv University. So in terms of the main findings, I'll show you some graphs. Nearly 100 Israeli left Israel in 23 and 24, okay? 50 years.
100,000. Yeah.
Yes, 100,000 Israeli left. This is in 2 years, okay? 50 years in each year, okay? We are jumping for an average about 25, 30 Israelis in a regular year. The number nearly doubles, okay? But if we look deeper, who lives, then we see that high human capital individuals are more likely to live. Talking about 950 doctors, medical doctors left, okay? Even if we count those who came back, it's still more than 500 medical doctors left. Moreover, if I'm looking, where did they study? In Israel, it's, I guess also the US, but it's very, very, very difficult to get into med school, okay? And you need the highest SAT, highest grades in order to get into universities. And there are some who study abroad, but 2/3 of those who leave are the best doctors, okay? And that's really a concern. I'll talk more about it in a minute, okay? Moreover, we look at those who leave, those who have academics, many of them STEM graduate, engineers, 3,300 left, okay? Also, if we count those who return to Israel, there's big numbers. I'll show you the spike in a minute using graph, okay? High income, young people. Moreover, those numbers are about those who leave. Also, when we look at those who return to Israel, we see a negative record, like a negative record. Fewer and fewer Israelis decide to come back. This is a big concern. This could be a strategic concern to the future of the Israeli economy, and not only the economy, Israel as a whole, as a country, as a liberal country, and we are concerned about it. I'll talk more about it. I'm trying to be alarmed, but in a sense, also to give some positive note at the end, so stay with me, okay? To give you more context, okay, other than these frightening numbers, I want to show you some graphs, okay? This is the number of Israelis leaving Israel in each year. We have data that we gather from the Central Bureau of Statistics, okay? It's like administrative data, and we get the data and we just, in a sense, count the people who leave Israel at the border, okay? Every Israeli who goes through Ben Gurion, there's a record about him leaving with an Israeli passport and so on, okay? And we do that starting in 2009. This is the first year of the data, and we do it for every year till 2025, okay? For somebody to be counted as if he left, we need him to be outside of Israel for more than a year, okay? It's not if you just went for a weekend, we don't count you as somebody who left, but we count those who live as people who left for more than a year. If you came back just for a visit, that's okay, but for a year, you were basically outside of Israel. And you see that from 2009 to 2018, 2019, we are about 30,000 Israelis were leaving each year. And that's fine in a sense. That's a equilibrium, what we say, okay? Equilibrium in the sense, it's good that the Israelis go abroad, they learn, they work, they get experience. It's a global economy, it's a global world, that's okay. But you can also see during COVID, things change, but the dramatic change starts at 2023. You see the jump from about 32, 35 to nearly 50K Israelis leaving Israel. Also in 2024, about nearly 50,000 Israeli leaving. Okay, these are the numbers I mentioned before. Nearly 100,000 people leaving Israel. Okay, and our concern is that there was an equilibrium that was okay, but now something have changed, and what have changed, we think, is we'll talk more about the reasons, but you understand what I'm talking about. I guess, in terms of one of the main reasons for people leaving Israel at that time.
Itai,
Now,
just to clarify one thing, maybe. I mean, when you're talking about people who are living at the passport, I mean, I assume that they are discounting those who are tourists, right? So there is like time
yes,
frame.
yeah, so what we are counting here, it's not tourists. It's like really first Israelis who lived in Israel at least 3 years before they left. Okay, you need to live in Israel at least 3 years before leaving. Okay, and after you left, it's more than a year that you didn't come back. Okay, so we are focusing not about tourists, about real Israelis with Israeli passports who lived in Israel at least 3 years. And then after they leave, they stay abroad outside of Israel more than a year. Okay, at least a year outside of Israel. Okay, now this is like that's the standard. Like over the year, it was about bouncing over 30,000, and then there's a jump in 23 and 24, jumping to 50K a year. Now, let's look at those who return. Some Israelis come back to Israel. That's great. Okay, and you can see that the number were always above 20,000 Israelis were coming back to Israel. Okay. During COVID 2020, there was nearly 30K Israelis who came back to Israel, because of various reasons. But during COVID, many Israelis preferred to come back to Israel. But what we are seeing since 22, you see a decline. And for the first time, since we have the beginning of the data, less than 20,000 Israelis came back to Israel. Okay, so it's like first many Israelis leave, and then we see that fewer Israelis return. If you take these numbers together, then you can see this net migration, okay, when we are thinking about 30,000 Israelis every year, okay, in 23 and 24, okay? Again, we are moving from an equilibrium, like a status quo of about 10,000 Israelis leave, like net migration in a regular year, okay, between 2000 and 2019, triples to nearly 30,000 a year, okay? This is a concern, but this is a concern especially because when we look who is leaving, what I mentioned before, we see that those with academic degree, okay, these are people with at least a BA degree. You see this jump going on. If we look at doctors, okay, let me say more about these doctors. We already said
Just
so
to
many
clarify,
doctors are leaving.
you mean physicianists, right? Medical doctors.
Yes, medical doctors, physicians are leaving, okay? Let me say something about physicians. Physicians right now, regardless of this, Israel, in terms of number of physicians per capita, Israel is struggling. I think it's not at the last place, but very few. We have at the bottom of the OECD number of physicians per capita in Israel. Okay, Israel benefited a lot from the immigration from the former Soviet Union in the early 1990s. But those physicians who came from the former Soviet Union to Israel have now retired after 30 years, and we are facing a deficit of physicians. Those physicians who leave, this is a really crucial, because again, we're talking about the best physicians, those who have already gained experience and so on. Okay, here I'm talking about Israeli physicians who are deciding to leave. I don't show you here, but the opposite is also true. Israeli physicians who go to the US for a fellowship are less likely to return this year. Okay, so again, it's not only more people are leaving, fewer are deciding to come back. Okay, that's true also for engineers. Israeli as a startup nation and how important the tech industry for the Israeli economy. The tech is responsible for more than 50% of the export of Israel, about 20% of the GDP. And if we are losing engineers, that's certainly a bad sign for the economy. Okay, so quickly, like a few more graphs, and then I'll talk about the interpretation. You can see here, in terms of the income, who is leaving And you can see here, again, I'm looking at the numbers that in the early years, like 2009, 2020, 2011, you can see that if I'm just cutting the data for those with a high income and then a low income, then in the early years, you can see that about 60% of those who left had low income, okay? But if we go further to 24, 23, it's only 50% of those who live have low income, okay? So more high income individuals prefer to leave, okay? That's also a concern that we see in the data, that those who already have been established, they probably have a decent salary and so on, they also show sign that they are more likely to leave, okay? Now, in terms of ages, here again, we see some changes, okay? This is like the ages, and this is the orange bar shows young individuals, in a sense, age 39 and below, and the green ones show above 40, okay? And here again, we see a trend that at the early years, like 2009, 20, and so on, we see that about 85, 84 of those who leave were young, but over time, we see that not only young people leave, okay? Also, some elder people decide to leave, okay? Again, sign that not only those who have been already found jobs, probably have kids and so on, they also decide to look for alternatives outside of Israel. And just one last slide. It's not only individuals, it's also the taxes that they pay, okay? And here, what we do is we just sum up the income taxes that those individuals paid in the year before they left, okay? So we were talking about individual who left in 2023. We sum up their income taxes at 2022, just the year before. And it's quite striking to see in terms of the loss of taxes for Israel. And you see the trend, okay? So the trend is very alarming in a sense. Again, more people, but it's not only more people leaving, it's also those people are high earners, high income, and so on, okay?
Just a quick question about this one. You're talking about income tax. That's not including taxes from selling startups and all those other potential tax, right?
You're right. This is just the income tax, no other thing that they are paying for, even if they have firms, if they have startups, everything. It's just the income tax, which is an important part, but surely not everything in terms of what those individuals are paying, okay? But that's a good point. Let me pause here in terms of the findings. I have some more, but let's stop here because I want to say, going back to your question of fear, those who leave, you saw high income, potential entrepreneurs, medical doctors, physicians, and so on. It's important because an alarming sense that the economy of Israel is based on human capital. This is our main strength, okay? We're still a startup nation and academia and physician. We have like an amazing health system, mostly because we have excellent physicians. And if those people are leaving, this is a risk to the Israeli economy, not only the economy, okay? Just to give you a comparison, other countries have suffered brain drain, okay? We know about Venezuela and Iran and Hungary and Lebanon. Many of these countries have not been able to recover, but some of these countries have natural resources like gas and oil, which potentially enable them to recover. I'm not saying it's easy to recover if people leave, but if you have natural resources, you can somehow sustain the economy. Unfortunately or fortunately, Israel does not have natural resources. That's why if let's say these top entrepreneurs decide to leave, this is potentially irreversible. And that's why we are putting a big alarm, big red flag for everybody to understand. We need to somehow stop this. We need to deal with it. We need to reverse it. And if we don't do it, this could be really irreversible and existential threat to Israel. That's an alarming point. Let me say something which is less alarming in a sense. Had I known that the number that I showed you, these are the numbers, and now we were able to stop it. Okay, no more people leaving. That's okay. Okay, if we take the absolute numbers, it's not something that the Israeli economy cannot deal with.
Sustained,
Okay,
yeah. Yeah.
it's not good numbers. I cannot say, okay, if we're waiting for if you're waiting for a medical appointment, you're waiting a long time, okay, for operation. It's not good numbers, but nevertheless, numbers right now by themselves are not shocking, are not something that we cannot deal with. Looking at the future, that's a concern, okay? That's a big concern. What would happen if we don't stop it, if we don't change the trend?
Okay, I want to kind of like give some perspective as well, Itai. I mean, and ask you about that. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing the data. It's super, super important, and I already got a couple of people asking for the full research. So I put on the comments both in Hebrew and in English, and I'll put Itai contact later if you want to follow up with him. So first of all, I mean, like again, as an Israeli expat, obviously, some people ask me, so now you're sitting outside of Israel, and you are talking about people leaving Israel. So how does it connect? So I want to just give point of view about it. Israel is always relocated, did relocation, went to study abroad, been ambassadors for Israel, among other who are in the world jury. So that there is nothing wrong. It's a free country, and people are moving out, moving back. There is nothing wrong about that, and I think that it actually even strengthen in good times Israeli economy when we have more professors, PhDs, startup entrepreneurs, investors around the world working and being ambassadors for Israel. So I think that there is nothing wrong about that. The point that Itai is making, and that's what we should worry about, is just a reminder to what happens in places like in Hungary and in Turkey and obviously in Iran. So some people telling me on the comment here, it says like, well, look at what we are able to achieve against Iran with our military force and with our science and with our technology. And that's exactly why we are talking today, because that's the risk. 20, 30 years from now, this will be an issue. What about immigration to Israel, Aliyah? Is it compensating on that? Do we see the data? Like, I mean, you said that after October, during COVID, people came back to Israel. Do we see any higher immigration coming post October 7? Is it compensating about? Did you research that?
So we didn't look at, so the numbers I showed you was not about new immigrants to Israel. It was only Israelis who decide to either leave or come back. There are some immigrants coming to Israel. I think the numbers are also getting smaller in a sense, but still there is positive immigration to Israel. Israel used to be a country that its population growth was growing by, I think, 1.5% every year, also because of natural born like people being born in Israel. For the first time ever now, the numbers have gone, I think, to 1%. So if we look at the general numbers, that Israeli population is not growing as fast as it used to, partially because people are leaving. So that's the main reason for the fact that the growth of the Israeli population slows down. But also people who immigrate to Israel, and that's excellent. It takes them time to assimilate and become part of the economy. Okay, that's why we are concerned that if people that are already Israelis leaving, it's a negative sign. It's a concern in that sense. Give you some just another way to think about it in terms of leaving. Jerusalem is as you know, the capital of Israel. In the early 1990s, about a third of the kids in Jerusalem were educated in secular schools. Now the number is about 9%. Okay, so that's, if you think about people leaving Israel, you can think about Jerusalem as a microcosmos for this pattern. So people leaving Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is becoming poorer and poorer. If there's by the Central Bureau of Statistics, it ranks cities in Israel according to a ranking of how the socioeconomic status. Jerusalem used to be at 5, now it's 2. Okay, become poorer and poorer, and that's, if we think about Jerusalem, and there are also other cities like Arad and Bet Shemesh, where strong, relatively high income population leave, and the city becomes poorer and poorer. And that's where we're thinking about what could happen to Israel if we don't change the pattern that
and that's obviously connected to other reasons like drafting and like bringing the ultra-Orthodox schools to learn STEM and so on and so on. But one of the keys that is striking me is in general, and I was actually creating a short video that I shared in the invitation, is to what I've been reading about what happened in Iran. We see what's happening now in Hungary and in Turkey and other places, but what's striking me was a lot of the messages that both leaders in Israel and the population, when they see that people are leaving, they are not necessarily encouraging to say like, "Hey guys, we want you to stay. It's important. This solidarity is important. You are important." I actually see the opposite messages.
Yes, it's
Not
amazing.
just from the regular people in the street, but also from government officials. Like, well, I mean, like we can deal without you, or something like that. I mean, like,
Yes.
how do you sense it on the street, on like
Eh,
on your groups?
No, I hear these voices mostly on the Twitter and so on. You see this, oh, well, just leave and so on, and that's amazing that there's a same reaction by Iranian leaders for the brain drain from for Iran. I remind you that I think, when was it, like before, at some point there was a saying for the pilots, the Israeli Air Force, we don't need you, the Israeli pilots, we can deal whatever.
During the
We
judicial
see what.
overhaul, some of the
Yes,
ministers like Kari
yes,
and others
yes.
stated that. Yes.
Yes, so I think I don't believe them that they say that, okay, but this is like a childish response to something that is really crucial for everybody. You don't care whether the physician that treats you, what he thinks about the government. You want the best treatment for you, for your parents, for your kids, whatever. But this is a kind of a childish response that they have,
Yeah,
but they need
it's
to deal
childish
with
and
it.
it's alarming as well. So
Yes.
I want to shift gears a little bit, and guys, I mean, like, if you have any question, please send them over to me, and I'll try to pick them up. But I want you to, I mean, I saw last, as part of what you were describing about switching gear to the pro-democracy academia effort, there was alarming letter came out from Professor Ariel Porat, the head of Tel Aviv University, right? Coming out last week, and he wrote it in on the Haaretz, um, about the degradation of democracy in Israel during the war, right? So one of the things that we learned, I mean, over the years in Israel, is that there is solidarity during war. People are together, and somehow that show up really on the street in the bomb shelter, but it doesn't come up from the government. Can you talk more about that, and can you tell a little bit more about how involved are the leaders of the academia and not, I mean, the head of the universities in this effort?
Um, Okay, so the daily routine now in Israel, as you can probably know, that we go to the shelters several times a day, okay, either during the night, during the day, and no, the education system doesn't work, doesn't operate, so everything, the economy is like really doesn't is not in normal times, okay? And you would expect the government to slow down the other thing that they are doing, but they don't, okay? So I don't think that they completely continue, but there are several examples where they actually continue to move forward with their judicial overhaul and other attempts. It could be being violent towards protesters, okay? It could be threats to disobey the Supreme Court decisions, okay? Clearly saying that they would violate any decree by the Supreme Court. It could be threats to fire the General Counsel, Gali Baharav Miara, go across the board in terms of what they're doing. But another example, not about the judiciary, today, okay, there was a decision by the government about coalition funds, okay? Coalition funds for the budget, it's about 6 billion shekels. It's a big chunk of the money being allocated by the government. And even though that you think about Kiryat Shmona, the north, that they are suffering a lot of missiles coming from Lebanon. They don't have an emergency room. They are really crying for help for the government. And the government today decided to allocate most of the money for sectoral decisions, mostly highly ultra-religious institution and so on. It was like, you're saying, where are you living in a sense? When would you understand that we are under war and we want you to behave in a way that sees the entire, the whole public, the whole population of Israel, rather than sectoral part of that you like for your voters? And unfortunately, the government and the coalition by itself is completely ignoring the needs of the Israeli population. Not talking, there are many things that you would expect. You would expect to have the Ministry of Finance would come up with a solution for small businesses. It's clearly they're not working, they're not getting any income, and they need to pay salaries and rent and so on. Need to come up with a solution for the education system in terms of parents who need to stay home, and still, despite the fact that we are running for 3 years of continuous kind of wars, there are no solutions. So in that sense, the government is still not functioning. In terms of what Ophir mentioned, Ariel Porat is the university president of Tel Aviv, is amazing, okay? He's a law professor, and he's clearly the leader in the sense of the main figure in Israel in terms of the pro-democracy, somebody who sits in the office, okay? It's not somebody who is retired, that is easy for somebody who already retired to say, and that's also important, things about the importance of human rights and democracy. He is a figure at a public university, and he is not afraid to defend the Israeli democracy and to say clearly what needs to be done or not done by the public and so on. I think so. I really almost daily in touch with Ariel, but I wish we had more like him in the sense of saying clearly, defending the Israeli democracy. By the way, I know that Ariel was in touch in several university presidents at the US, giving him some kind of an advice from his experience in Israel about what should be done in other countries like the US that face a threat on the democracy and the institutions.
Not just democracy and institution, also the threat on the freedom of academia that is being determined. There is a question here about, did you make any research about the reasons why people are leaving? I mean, do we know what are the reasons? Or obviously, again, if we go back to the graph, I mean, like 2020, just where the spike started. I mean, this was like the first. 2020 was COVID. People came back, and then elections, 4 times election, and then the change government, and then judicial overhaul. I mean, did you make any research on that, or you can refer to any research about that?
Yeah, so our research specifically don't look at that, but I have from other polls that we conducted, I would try to classify the reason for 3. First reason is the threat to the liberal society, and that goes into the judicial overhaul. And I emphasize that we see the spike, the jump in 2023. It happens before October 7th. Already in the month before October 7th, people decided to leave. And that's also to stress that the threat to the Israeli democracy is one reason why people have left or decided to leave. After October 7th, we see this continues, and we think that the Shivyon Banetel, the fact that people are serving in the army and some big part of the Israeli democracy, of the Israeli society do not serve. And if you look at the future about the demographic trends, that also raises concern about the future. So that's the second reason. So it's first the judicial overhaul, second the Shivyon Banetel as another issue, and the last issue is the cost of living. You know, Israel is expensive. It's hard for young people to buy a house and so on. And this is another reason why, especially young people, try to look for other places. So these are the main three reasons why people leave.
There is a question about, and I don't know if you have the answer for not, but I mean, like, even though we see all those alarms and we are worried about people leaving and we are worried about judicial overall and during a war, I mean, it seems like the data show that the economy growing. The shekel is obviously stronger because of many reasons that are not necessarily related to Israel. But it's from all perspective, even during war, it seems like we are breaking records on the economy levels, like startups. I mean, we have the biggest sale of a startup of Wiz and so on. So, is there is an is it there is are you expecting a delay from the data that you show to where the impact will be, or because of the war, the economy is growing? Or maybe I'm
No,
wrong.
yes. So the economy, if we look at Israel, let me go back. At the end of 22, Israel economy was at the best situation ever, okay? In terms of the GDP growth per capita, in terms of the debt of the government, in terms of the credit rating agent, the ranking of the credit of Israel. Israel was its best situation at the end of 22. Since then, the GDP per capita is stagnating. We are not growing in 23 and 24. We were not growing for the first time, probably not the first time, but for many years, the GDP per capita was zero or nearly zero. Okay, if you think about the drop in the rating, Moody's as S&P have downgraded the rating of Israel. So for the main indicators of the Israel economy don't look good, not as good as they were in 22 for sure. On the other hand, I must be candid in the sense the stock exchange is doing great. Okay, in Israel, if you put your money in the stock exchange, you earned a lot of money, but the stock exchange is not the economy. Okay, there's also big money going to the tech because of the AI revolution and so on. So not everything is negative, but I think that if we still go look at the main indicators of the economy, the GDP per capita, the debt of the these don't look very attractive over the last few years. Okay, so
Okay.
and our concern, of course, is about the future. Okay, about the future, if these high quality individuals leave, that's a concern.
Okay. So I think that there is another question here, but I think we kind of like discussed it. I mean, there is indication of reversibility of the trend, and I think we don't know yet, right? I mean, like we have no clue about that.
Yeah, let me say
Correct me if
just
I'm wrong.
yeah. So we don't know, and let me just say two things about it. First, kind of anti-Semitism in the
Anti-Semitic
world is a
events,
kind
yeah.
of could help us, but that's a bad reason for people going back to Israel. That's for sure. And let me stress, the upcoming election are crucial for the future of Israel in many aspects. Okay, and we need to win these elections. And if we don't win these elections, we don't see reversibility. We'll see an increase in the numbers of people leaving. So that's
When are we expecting to see the number of 2025?
Okay.
If it's
I
continuing
don't
the
hear you,
trend?
Phil.
Sorry? Can you hear me? Itai?
No.
Itai, can you hear me?
לא שומעים אותך. I can't hear you.
Can other people hear me?
No, now we hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I was asking like when are we expecting to see the trends of 2025, like the data?
So we are waiting. In order to say something definitive, we need at least a year, okay, to say so if somebody left, okay? So in a sense, only at the end of 26, I would say something about 2025. We're not trying to come up with an alternative way to have some initial findings, but we need to wait some more before we know.
Itai, can you speak a little bit about the effort of the academia regarding the upcoming elections? Like, what are you working on? What are your plans? How do we get? What can we do to support you, etc.?
Yes. So I'll tell you one important initiative that is taking place is having conferences. We know that many Israel academics would come to Israel to vote, okay? And we hope that many will come. We want to celebrate the Israeli academia, and there is going to be academic conferences in many disciplines, in biology, in economics, in computer science, on the day before the election take place. We don't know when the election will take place, but it's going to be at some Tuesday. And on the Monday just before, we're going to have a big conferences to celebrate the Israeli science. And we want this to be a big event where many Israelis, both from here and both from abroad, will come to that conference and to join forces and to potentially make collaboration of that. And I think that's going to be an opportunity for those who come to also celebrate and strengthen the ties between Israel and abroad. So that's one initiative that we are planning to do. We're also working with the brothers and sisters in arms for making sure that there's going to be fair elections, okay, and no problems in the election. And when you're gonna in many call feeds like
Yeah,
polls,
yeah.
academics will be there, okay, just to make sure that there's no
Safeguarding the election. Yeah.
yeah, safeguarding the election. Another big effort that we are making, and I'm proud to be part of that, over the last year, we formed an NGO. This NGO has filed between 50 to 20 petitions to the Supreme Court. And why we do that? There are many laws that this government is passing which are anti-democratic and harming the general council and passing laws that are anti-democratic. What we're doing, we understand we are connecting with the best law practices in Israel, the best law practices and the best litigators, and we pay them money in order for them to sign the petition and go to court and convince the Supreme Court judges to make the right decisions. Okay, there's so many cases in Israel when you need to make the best case in order to convince the Supreme Court judges to make the right cases. Okay, and that's what we're doing. Come up with an NGO, work with the best law practices in Israel in order to make the best cases. For these cases that we bring, I'll give you a few in a second, a few examples. We go to the court, and with us, we have Nobel laureates, Israeli Nobel laureates, former university professors. We have former head of the Shabak and the Mossad joining us for this petition, and we go with them to the court in order to make the cases, the best cases in front of the judges. Okay, some examples. The decision, the law to change the appointment, how judges are being appointed, the decision to dismiss Gali Baharav Miara, the decision to close Galei Tzahal. Okay, there are many cases that the Supreme Court need to make decision, but you need to convince the Supreme Court to make the best decision, and we are there. Okay, and this is something that the academia is behind. Okay, we're not the only body that does that, but surely we are an important player. Okay, and believe me, I was just a professor at the university. I had no connection with this kind of
You were not an
active.
activist like I wasn't,
Yes, I
and
was
so
not
many
activist
others
before.
wasn't. Yeah, definitely. So that's actually a good time to just mention that UnXeptable is actually going to launch a website that will help anyone who wants to donate to efforts to voter turnout, voter intimidation, safeguarding the election, and first-time voters. We will kind of like try to help the world jury and Jewish Americans to actually donate and support and write letters and do whatever we can because you mentioned that maybe I mean anti-Semitic level will actually help people to immigrate. I hope anti-Semitic event will not happen, and obviously I hope that Israel will become a great place to that everyone wants to come because it's flourishing and it's thriving. So again, I mean, like our parents and our grandparents and your grandparents who lived here during 48, 67, 73, we have a big role to make the difference. Um, and that's information we're going to send out. So again, if you know anyone who is used to work for development and raising money and connected to donors, please contact me, and we will have to get more help about that. Last but not least, Itai, I want to kind of like ask you about. Actually, before that, I want to also mention that we don't know yet when the election will be happening. I mean, we right now the date is October 27, but those of you who think that they would want to fly and vote, one, there is an initiative about that can help. There is a by Aid Coalition. But even if you don't deal with them, like buy a ticket and make it changeable. Prices are going to go up as soon as we get closer to the election. And again, buy a changeable ticket. It might happen in June, it might happen in July, September. No one knows. And obviously, somehow it's also ties to other things that happening now in the war. So
Maybe
that's
just
another
just
question. Yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing to emphasize, every vote counts. In the last election, we were missing 3,000 votes for Meretz to get 4 seats in the parliament. This is really crucial. So every vote counts, and we hope that everybody who is eligible to vote will come and vote in the coming elections. That's really crucial.
So those efforts, and I mean that Itai was speaking about in Supreme Court and others, it's obviously really critical to say that there are really a lot of it is being to intimidate the Palestinian Israelis who vote, Arab Israelis, and we're going to help with that. Obviously, voter turnout over there will be critical. And in general, I mean, like we are really worried also about what's happening in the West Bank and the violence there, and with the violence that is happening there. Again, we almost forgot, but 2 weeks ago, Lucy Irish, a news reporter, was arrested in a very racist way as part of the voter intimidation thing that's happening in Israel. So these are all floating from violence that is floating from anywhere into Israel, and we will need to fight that as well and help with fighting that.
Yes.
We are almost on time, and I want to thank you, Itai, really much for joining us. I'm happy that you didn't get any alarms and alerts. Maybe it's a sign, but who knows? The night is just starting. Keep an eye on updates. Subscribe to the YouTube channel because the recordings are uploading there. If you have any contacts to fundraisers that can help us here to help the grassroots in Israel, like again, we usually say it's like we are helping other states in America, even though we cannot vote there, right? We can still support the grassroots that do that. Um, and in general, just be prepared, and hopefully the war will be ending soon. Hopefully with success. We don't know, but there is a lot of things that we can do from here to support Israel, support Israelis, and yeah. And I just want to mention that we just heard there was an incident in Baltimore in a synagogue. Anyone from there, we're standing with you. And also here, Israelis in San Jose, there was some incident. So again, things are crazy, but stay on with the eye on the ball. We have to win this election to get things better here and there. Itai, any last comments that you want to mention?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. Hopefully, things would be better both in the US and also in Israel. Thank you very much.
And remember, we are doing it to make Israel a better place, to make this relationship between world Jewry and Israelis thrive, and make Israel as a liberal, keep Israel as a Jewish and liberal democracy.